Many books and documentaries state that a 17-year-old Carmine Persico beat another youth to death in a famous gang fight in the early 1950s. This is, however, inaccurate. It was in fact his friend Anthony Scarpati who gunned down a rival at the Prospect Park Rumble that Persico was also involved in. It was a fight that would serve as the inspiration for the classic movies West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause. Decades later, Anthony Scarpati would rise to the position of acting boss of the Colombo crime family. Let's check it out. Welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to take a quick look at the infamous youth gang fight that involved future Colombo crime family boss Carmine Persico and future Colombo crime family acting boss Anthony Scarpati. In the 1950s, New York City was rife with street gangs, each predominantly divided by ethnic group. There were blacks, Italians, Irish and Puerto Ricans contributing to the 6,000 gang members from the hundreds of gangs across New York City. These gangs had an array of interesting names. For example, there was the Jokers, the Untouchable Bishops, the Mau Mau's, the Fort Greene Chaplains, the Supreme Team, the Tigers, and the Butler Street Gents. Gangs such as these across the city often battled over turf. Carmine Persico and Anthony Scarpati were members of the Garfield Boys, sometimes referred to as just the Garfield Boys. The Garfield Boys were Italian-American and would eventually form part of what was known as the South Brooklyn Boys Gang. In May 1950, according to reports, Garfield Boys member 16-year-old Dominic Labua stepped onto Tiger territory to see a girl, something that angered the Tigers, specifically Alfredo Vento. A fight was arranged at the Boathouse in Prospect Park, South Brooklyn to settle the dispute, and was initially supposed to be a one-on-one fight between Dominic Labua from the Garfield Boys and 17-year-old Alfredo Vento from the Tigers, both boys being cheered on by their pumped-up gangmates. But things escalated quickly into a full-on rumble between the rival groups, both armed to the teeth. And by the time the mass brawl had ended, one boy lay dead, and another was in a critical condition with 2 stab wounds. But what do many books and documentaries say about this fight? In his excellent book 5 Families, mob historian Selwyn Raab writes, "In March 1951, at age 17, Carmine Persico was arrested for the fatal beating of another youth during a brawl in Prospect Park." However, this is inaccurate on several points. As can be seen in this news article from March 3rd, 1951, Persico was arrested that month. However, it was for the fatal shooting of Steve Bove, whose body was found on February the 23rd in a gutter near 420 Carroll Street. Nothing to do with a brawl in Prospect Park, as Selwyn Raab mentions. The article states that Steve Bove had been shot from behind. Police said they were seeking Carmine's brother, Alphonse, 21, in connection with the Bove slaying. They added that there had been bad blood between the Persico brothers and Bove since the shooting and wounding of Carmine Persico on January the 12th. We also know that Steve Bove was executed in a car and not in a fight in Prospect Park. In the end, Carmine's brother, Allie Boy Persico, was sentenced for the murder of Steve Bove. But many speculate that Allie Boy took the rap for his younger brother. It appears that Selwyn Raab and many other books and documentaries are confusing this 1951 arrest with Persico's 1950 arrest after the Prospect Park brawl. But even then, Carmine Persico hadn't killed anyone, so it is unclear where this rumour that he brutally beat another youth to death in the Prospect Park brawl came from. Perhaps, as with many mob myths, when they're repeated again and again in documentaries, books, and on YouTube channels, the myth is taken as gospel. So, what did happen at the 1950 Prospect Park Rumble? As mentioned earlier, initially it was supposed to be a one-on-one fight between Dominic Labua from the Garfield Boys and Alfredo Vento from the Tigers. In addition to this, there was supposed to be another fight between two other rival members. Things escalated quickly after Dominic Labua had stabbed Alfredo Vento twice in the stomach. In the chaos that ensued, Anthony Scarpati of the Garfield Boys shot and killed James Fortunato, 18, of the Tigers. One newspaper reported of the incident. The two boys finally agreed to say it with fists, under the watchful eyes of their mobs. They had hardly begun to fight near the shore of Swan Lake when the spectators waded in. More than 40 youths participated, wielding knives, brass knuckles and fists, before police finally broke it up. Fortunato was shot in the back, and Vento was stabbed in the abdomen. The brawl and the killing of James Fortunato in the 1950 Prospect Park fight was covered extensively by newspapers at the time. Following the fight, the police detained 8 members of the Garfield Boys, also known as the South Brooklyns, including Carmine Persico, Dominic Labua, and Anthony Scarpati, as can be seen in this photo. The 16-year-old Carmine Persico is second in from the right. Anthony Scarpati quickly admitted to the shooting and killing of James Fortunato. When he was interviewed by Commander O'Leary, Scarpati initially denied being involved in a gang, but later said that he was with the Garfields. One newspaper covered Scarpati's version of events. It reported, 2 shots were fired, although only one hit Fortunato. O'Leary said Scarpati had not explained what he was doing with the gun in the first place, where he got it, or where he had ditched it afterward. His story, the inspector told reporters, was that he had gone to the park to watch the 2 fistfights, one between 2 fellows named Donald and Wally, the other between somebody named Dominic and a boy known as Wimpy. When one of the fisticuffers started getting the worst of it, which one wasn't indicated, his pals came to his rescue, Scarpati said, and in a moment there was a free-for-all with some 30 partisans going at one another. Scarpati found himself at grips with Fortunato. He pulled his gun and opened fire, he told police, but insisted he did not shoot at Fortunato. When Anthony Scarpati entered court to plead guilty, it was said that he was cool, he was unconcerned. He spent most of the time admiring well-manicured fingernails. He was dazzling in a light blue sports jacket, a canary yellow sweater, dark blue suede shoes. However, despite his coolness, when his 55-year-old mum Mary Scarpati approached, the 16-year-old broke down into tears, as did his mother, resulting in the headline, Mum melts tough guy teen killer into a crybaby. This wouldn't be the last set of tears for the mother and son. At Scarpati's sentencing in December 1950, the pair broke down into tears yet again, after Scarpati had been sentenced to 15 to 30 years for first-degree manslaughter. After Scarpati was led away, his mother Mary fainted into the arms of his 2 sisters. Interestingly, after the Prospect Park brawl, Carmine Persico was only charged with unlawful assembly and held on $5,000 bail. There is no mention at the time or in any reports after of Carmine Persico beating another youth to death in Prospect Park. Scarpati would serve his time and upon release hooked up again with his close friend Carmine Persico, who in Scarpati's time inside had become a made man and captain in the now Colombo crime family. Persico would eventually rise to the position of boss of the Colombo family, and he didn't forget his boyhood friend. He had Scarpati inducted into the crime family not long after the books had opened. Some say it was in 1976 when Scarpati was 42, whereas other sources say it was in 1977. Shortly after this, Anthony Scarpati was promoted to the position of captain, and he operated out of Nesta Social Club, at 5th Avenue and President Street. It is stated that he was mainly involved in loan sharking, sports betting and numbers. In the early 1980s, it is alleged that he was the co-owner of a Staten Island bar called On the Rocks, along with Greg Scarpa Sr and Greg Scarpa Jr. In 1984, when it was decided to execute 31-year-old Mary Bari, an ex-girlfriend of Allie Boy Persico, for fears that she'd become an informer, Anthony Scarpati allegedly said, "We're probably going to go to hell for this." Mary Bari met Greg Scarpa Jr and Scarpa Sr at Carmine Sessa's club under the promise of a job. Scarpa Jr grabbed her and held her down, and his father, the Grim Reaper, shot her 3 times in the head. Her body was dumped in the street 2 miles away from the club. In 1985, Carmine Persico, amidst all his legal problems, promoted his old friend Anthony Scarpati to the position of acting boss. However, Anthony Scarpati's time in this position of acting boss was short-lived. In November 1986, Anthony Scarpati, then 53, was sentenced to 35 years in prison for racketeering, in what was known as the StarQuest trial or the Colombo trial. Also convicted in this trial were his old friends Carmine Persico, who received 39 years, and Gerry Langella, who received 65 years. Within a couple of months, both Langella and Persico would receive an additional 100 years each in the commission trial. Anthony Scarpati died in prison in 2002. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.